If you are joining us here, I expect that you've already seen 8.5 videos part 1 and 2 about how to tell if you have a complete square and how to complete the square with perfect numbers where everything comes out in whole numbers. When we do these problems, we're going to have a lot of radicals where we're going to be simplifying those using the factor trees. Okay, so let's start with our first process. If I cut b in half, so negative 12 in half is negative 6, and square that, do I get c, the 26? No. So we're going to go ahead and copy that down. We're moving our 26 to the other side, and when I do that, it becomes negative. So negative 26, and I fill in my blank on the other side. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our square so we can see what we need to make that work. All right, half of negative 12 is a minus 6, so we're doing x minus 6. Negative 6 squared makes a 36, so that's what I'm putting in my blank. And then I'm combining negative 26 plus 36 makes a 10. We're ready to solve by square rooting on both sides, except right now you'll notice that 10 is not a perfect square, so let's simplify it. We can grab a different color. We're doing 2 times what? 2 times 5. And 5 doesn't break apart, so I'm going to make a note here. We can't square root 10 and make it anymore. Let me say simplify. We can't simplify square root of 10. So when we write this down, it's going to say x minus 6 equals a plus or a minus, because we have to have that still. We are square rooting it, even though it's not changing value, plus the square root of 10. Now, same thing that we were doing before. We do have to move that 6 to the other side. He does have to change signs, but we won't be able to write final answers here. Not with the braces anyways. We're going to do x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 10. This right here is a final answer. Yes, that's simplified. Yes, you are done. There's no calculator part. That is the end of him. Okay, so let's look at number 12. We're asking ourselves, if I cut b in half and square it, would I get 8? No. If I cut 8 in half, I get 4. 4 squared is not going to be 8, so that's not working for us. We're going to need a different number. Let's set up our square so that we can fill him in. All right, half of 8 we just said was 4. 4 squared makes 16. That's what's going in my blanks. So if we combine negative 8 plus 16, that makes a positive 8, and we are ready to solve. I square root to get rid of that squared, and I notice that 8 is not a perfect square, so we got to simplify. 2 times 4, 2 times 2. If I look at that, I have one pair of dates and one little single guy here. So when I write this out, it's going to have x plus 4, same thing as before, equals plus or minus. We have to have that after we take the square root step. But now we have a date of 2's and a single pair of 2's. We are almost done with this question. There will not be braces again because we don't have a whole number. We're going to move the 4 over and then we will be done. But that 4, he is not going to add with the 2's. He happens before the plus or minus. So x equals negative 4, then your plus or minus 2 root 2. That's a final answer. Again, the negative 4 is not adding with the 2. He stays separate. He stays before. If you need to watch those two again, go ahead and pause it, look back. Otherwise, we're moving to 13 and 14. All right, so number 13, if I check him, cutting negative 8 in half and squaring it, does that make 21? No. Which means I need to move my 21 to the other side, change it to a negative, and create a new blank. If we set up the square, we can go ahead and fill him in. Half of that negative 8 would make a negative 4. Filling in the blanks, I'm going to take negative 4 and square it. That makes us 16. Then I can combine negative 21 plus 16 makes a negative 5. And at this point, I'm starting to get excited. Because if you remember from the last 2 units, when I square root right here, what happens to this guy? Hopefully in your mind, you're remembering that you can't square root a negative number. which means that we get to use that big fancy answer, non-real answers. Okay, I know you guys get excited for those, but I do need you to understand that I have to see this much work. I have to see why you're writing it. You can't do it from the 21, you can't do it from the 16, you can't even do it from the -5. It is not until you actually attempt to square root that negative that I want to be able to see non-real answers. Okay? All right, so this guy is done. We have one more question together. All right, last question, number 14. First, if I cut 12 in half and square it, do I get -12? No. So we need to go ahead and move that 12 to the other side and create a blank. When I move him to the other side, he changes to a positive, and I make sure I have a blank on both sides. Setting up my square so I can fill him in. Half of 12 makes a +6. 6 squared makes 36. I'm putting that on both sides. And then we're combining. 12 plus 36 makes 48. We're ready to solve by square rooting both sides, except 48 is not a perfect square. So we're going to have to do a little factor tree on this. 2 and 24, 2 and 12, 2 and 6. I'm doing 2 until 2 doesn't work. 2 and 3. And I actually ended with a perfect prime number 3. So if I look at this, I have a date of 2's, another date of 2's, and then this little single guy over here. So when I write out my answers, I'm looking at x plus 6 plus or a minus. 2's and 2's are my dates. Square root with a 3. Let's simplify that one time before we move the 6. So we have plus or minus. Remember that that turns into a 4 because we multiply it together, square root 3. And now I'll show you my note. Now we're moving the 6 over. What happens to the 6 is that he changes to a negative, but he does not add with the 4. Plus or minus 4 root 3 stays on its own. That 6 is just moving over there. This is our final answer. All right, I know that's a lot of video notes, all for 8.5. This is a tricky topic, but I think that if you watch it a couple times or go over the ones that you're having a hard time with, I think that you'll be able to figure those out. If you need to look back at anything, please feel free to do so. Go ahead and get started on 8.5 practice.